Can we start, Ashutosh?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Good morning, teachers and colleagues. Today I will be presenting a case. This patient is a 70-year-old male who is a resident of Mumbai and he is a retired MTNL employee. He has presented to us with chief complaints of yellowish discoloration of sclera and skin for 3 weeks, high colored urine for 3 weeks, and weight loss of 6 kgs in past 1 month. He was apparently asymptomatic 3 weeks back when he observed yellowish discoloration of sclera in his skin. So this was gradually deepening with no intermittent decrease in yellowish discoloration. And it was associated with generalized itching all over the body. And it was associated with high colored urine. And it was associated with anorexia and weight loss of 6 kilos in past 1 month. So there was no history of fever or pain abdomen. There was no history suggestive of gastric outlet obstruction, melena, hematemesis, no history of sticky stools, no history of abdominal pain, and there was no history of blood transfusion in the past. And there was no history of previous attacks of jaundice. There was no history of alteration of bowel habits, abdominal pain, and no history of altered sleep pattern or altered behavior. In past history, he underwent open cholecystectomy in 2006 for symptomatic polylithiasis. He has a history of myocardial infarction for which he underwent PTCA in 2018. Currently, he is on aspirin, clopidogrel, and atorvastatin. And he's hypertensive. He is on metoprolol. And during the course of evaluation, he gives history of percutaneous drainage procedure in TMH. There is no significant family history. He is married, 3 children, and addictions. He is a tobacco chewer and reformed smoker. He is non-alcoholic and non-vegetarian by diet. He gives history of disturbed sleep, that is due to itching, and there is no history of alteration of bowel habits. So to summarize, he is a 70-year-old male with history of open cholecystectomy in 2006 and comorbidities having coronary artery disease and hypertension. Presents with a short duration history of painless jaundice without fever. So my impression is it is obstructive jaundice due to probably malignant etiology.
Okay. That's fair. Any particular reason why you're saying that malignant etiology?
So history of significant weight loss and anorexia for 1 month. Sir.
Yeah, and also most of the periampullary and biliary tract cancers have a peak in this decade, right? 6 to 7 decades. So that additionally will go towards that. Okay. So what do you want to do to investigate this patient?
I would like to do this LFT and sonography of abdomen first.
Okay.
And
okay. And what were the findings of the liver function test and the sonography?
Yes, sir. Examination wise, he was conscious, cooperative, well oriented, ECOG PS1. There was icterus and scratch marks on the skin. And there was no hysterexis, no adenopathy. And on abdominal examination, right subcostal incision scar were present, was healthy scar, and otherwise inspection was normal. In palpation, there was no palpable lump and there was no organomegaly. And percussion and auscultation was normal. Rest of systemic examination was in normal limits.
Did you look for the supraclav?
Yes, sir. There was no adenopathy.
Okay.
So provisionally, I'm considering diagnosis of biliary tract malignancy and periampullary carcinoma, or maybe carcinoma of head of pancreas.
Okay. So why not gallbladder cancers?
Means biliary tract malignancy, cholangiocarcinoma, but GB cancers can also present later in course with the obstructive jaundice.
I mean,
broad history.
So the two DDs here that you may consider, one is, a gallbladder cancer, because gallbladder cancer presenting with obstructive jaundice is not uncommon at all in our country. One, why not a hepatocellular carcinoma?
Short history, sir. 3 weeks history.
That
No
really
previous
doesn't.
history of, yes.
Sorry.
There was no previous history suggestive of liver cirrhosis or jaundice in past, and it's a short history of 3 weeks.
Not all of your patients with HCC will have, a previous history of Hep B, Hep C, or alcohol. I agree that a liver, a HCC with jaundice would probably be a late stage when there is significant liver decompensation. But considering you have jaundice, one of the DDs should be, maybe down the list, I agree. So, periampullary cancers and the biliary tract cancer would be your first. And then maybe HCC. Can it be metastases from any cause? Ashutosh?
Yes, sir.
Huh? Sorry?
It's only history of there is no history of other primary sites.
No, because
Like it can be means a lymph node or other mass compressing the portal is at the hilum or the porta.
okay. Okay, fair. Akhil, any questions? I mean, do you want to ask him anything? Is Akhil there? I think not. Okay, so I mean, in the exam, okay, in the exam, I would not want you to put cholangiocarcinoma as first. I would suggest that you put gallbladder cancer, or at the most biliary tract cancers with gallbladder cancer as your first, because the ratio of gallbladder to cholangiocarcinomas in our country is some 4:1 or 5:1. Okay, so I would not want you to do that. What do you mean by periampullary cancer, Ashutosh?
So, periampullary cancers, they will comprise of cancers arising within 2 centimeters of ampulla of Vetter. So that will include distal CBD cancers, duodenal cancers within 2 centimeters, and
So technically, even the term periampullary includes head of pancreas cancers, but because they have a different natural history and prognosis and outcomes, they are considered separately. But you're right. The distal CBD, the ampulla per se, and the duodenum around the ampulla is considered periampullary. Okay, fine. Okay, so that is your differential diagnosis. Now, how do you want to proceed?
so LFT and ultrasound abdomen first. I would like to know.
Okay. So the LFT will tell you, okay, this much jaundice, this much SAP. Why do you want to do an ultrasound?
So ultrasound first means to look for ascites, any abdominal lymph nodes, and IHBRD.
How sensitive is an ultrasound for abdominal lymph nodes? Yeah. Huh? No, no.
Yes.
I mean, for see, retroperitoneal lymph node, even locoregional lymph nodes, ultrasound is not a sensitive investigation. I agree that you want to do an ultrasound, but you want to do it mainly to look for one, you said correctly, ascites, and the other one is to confirm your findings of obstructive jaundice that there is biliary radical dilatation, right? Correct. Okay, so these are your labs. Okay, okay, yeah. What were the sono findings?
So ultrasound, it had right lobe of liver was smaller in size, and there was a heterogeneous area of 6.3 into 6.1 centimeter, and there were bilateral IHBRD, and there was no ascites.
Okay, great. So now you know that there's no ascites and you do have biliary radical dilatation. What do you want to do next?
So I would like to do a cholangiogram to look for the level of obstruction.
Okay, okay. Fine. And anything else that you can do if you want to look at the level of obstruction? A non-invasive method?
You can do MRCP.
Yes, you can do an MRI with MRCP. Why would it be useful here?
So
Besides looking at the level of block, how else can it be useful? Okay. Are you there?
Staging means
Yes, correct. So an MRI is an excellent investigation for the liver. Okay. In terms of looking at parenchymal disease plus involvement of the extrahepatic biliary tract, MRI is one of the investigations of choice. Okay.
yes.
So an MRI plus MRCP will also help you in this regard. But yes, a PTC gram will be good. And the additional thing is that once you have the PTC gram, it will help you decide the level of block and the type of stenting required. Okay, good. So, what does the PTC gram show?
So PTC gram showed type 3A block.
Can you just explain the types of blocks, Ashutosh?
Yes, sir. So type 1 block is just below the level of hilum. So it will be involving CBD below the level of hilum. And type 2 block will involve the hilum. Type 3 is type 3A and B. Type 3A will be right hepatic duct involvement, and type 3 will be left hepatic duct involvement. And type 4 will be involvement of both hepatic ducts.
Okay. Now, okay. So you have said this is a type 3A block, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Fine. So to relieve this obstruction, okay, assuming that what investigation would you do to relieve this type of obstruction?
So we like to do PTBD to relieve obstruction.
Okay. Why not an ERCP?
So ERCP will be will be helpful in type 1 or type 2 up to type 2 non-communicating blocks. So more than this block, we will have to go for PTBD.
Okay. So don't use the term non-communicating block in the exam, type 2. Because that is essentially something that we use only in TMH. A type 2 non-communicating block is essentially like a type 4 block, except that, when you're involving both the ducts, but sometimes, I mean, can anyone see my mouse move? Yes, I don't know. Okay, so the roof of the confluence of the ducts is not involved, but it goes into both of the ducts. So that is called a type 2 non-communicating block. It is purely a term in Tata. So I would suggest you not use that in the exam. Type 1 and type 2 blocks will be amenable to ERCP, and type 3 and 4 will be amenable by PTPD. That's what you need to go ahead and say. So you did a PTPD, then what?
Then we like to go for cytology, blood cytology.
Okay.
It was suggestive for adenocarcinoma. Then after PTBD, once bilirubin is coming down, then we like to go for imaging to stage.
You've forgotten something. PTPD तो आपने कर दिया, फिर क्या करोगे? Stent भी तो डालोगे ना भाई?
हाँ sir. Stent. Yes sir.
Don't forget that, please. What are the types of stents that you know of? Basic.
Plastic stent and metal stent.
Excellent. What are the pros and cons of both these type of stents?
So plastic stent is cheaper, but it is more susceptible to stent block. So we'll have to do stent exchange maybe every 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
Metallic stent is having more period of patency, so it can be there for 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, good. Go on. So let's say that this anything else. So till now you've only done a sonography and a PTPD, and you have decided that the level of block is a type 3A block. Okay. Obviously, for the reasons you mentioned, maybe a metal stent is better. But is there any reason in which case you would consider a plastic stent other than cost? Okay. The reason I'm asking you this is till now, other than a sonography telling you that you had a small lesion in IHBR, you don't know what is the nature of this disease, what is the extent of the disease, right? Because you did not mention a CT till date or an MR, correct?
Yes.
Right. So now, if it is surgically intervenable in terms of a hepatectomy with EHBTE or something, if you had an idea of the stage, right,
Yes.
you would also know that, okay, if this patient is going to be unresectable, you would put a metal stent. But if the patient was resectable, you would put maybe a plastic stent or a short metallic stent and then consider for operation, no?
Yes.
Right? So somewhere till the time you got your drainage and stuff, you also need some idea of what is the resectability status of the patient, which is where what you had mentioned earlier, the MRI with MRCP will come. Okay?
Yes.
So at least some kind of a basic abdominal CT or an MRI, MRCP should be done while you are working up for drainage also, because that will decide the type of stent that you need. Okay? Okay. Go on. What did you do next? Yeah. Okay.
CT was done. So
Okay.
yes, so CT it was showing in arterial phase there was ill-defined mild enhancement in the right lobe of liver, and in portal phase there was rim enhancement, and delayed venous phase showed delayed enhancement.
Okay. So what is the difference now? What is the differences that you normally see classically between an HCC and intrahepatic cholangiocarcinoma?
So HCC will show early arterial enhancement and early venous washout.
Okay. And why is that? Why is this classically seen?
Because of more angiogenesis in
Okay. So what is the blood supply of the liver normally?
portal vein and hepatic artery.
Okay. Which one is more?
Portal vein.
In the HCCs, it is reversed. Okay. So you have more from the artery, so that's why you have that classical arterial hyper enhancement and early venous washout. So in terms of the contrast, yes, okay, you can differentiate between an HCC and an intrahepatic cholangiocarcinoma. Anything else that you can see from the CT that will help you differentiate between the two? Ashutosh? Yeah, subcapsular retractions, you can often in cholangiocarcinomas, you can see a very clear subcapsular retraction. Okay, that's one of the classical features that can, differentiate between an IHCC and HCC, along with the contrast features that you mentioned. Okay, there are others also, but these two you should know: the presence of the intense immediate arterial enhancement and the early venous washout versus yeah. Anything else that you should comment on the CT scan, Ashutosh?
Lymph node status.
Yeah, can you see any lymph nodes?
No, sir.
I mean, in the phases that you have shown me, I can't see any. Anything else that you should comment on?
Apart from node.
Sorry?
Yes, apart from lymph node, sir.
Yeah, so when you look at the CT, you should look at 3 to 4 things. One, what is the size of the lesion and in which lobes it is there. As far as I can see, it's essentially a right limited disease. Is that correct?
Yes.
These are very limited. These are very limited cuts, and we should not make these comments on these limited cuts. But for the purposes of the discussion, it is a right limited lesion, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you should comment on whether there are any lesions in other lobes of the liver as well. One. Two, you should comment on the status of locoregional nodes, whether they are present or not, especially regional as well as non-regional, the para-aortic, pre-caval, that. Then three, you should look at the portal vein, whether there is thrombus or not. All right. These are 4 to 5 things you can look besides the, contrast characteristics, right? And of course, look for any extrahepatic disease, right?
Yes.
So the findings here were only right limited and no other disease. Is that right? Excellent. So you have now trained this and you have put a stent. What stent was put?
It was a metallic stent.
Okay. Was it a short sense? I mean, normally the degree of fibrosis caused by a SEMS makes it slightly difficult for them to do surgery. But okay. So what did they do next?
So since it's a liver limited disease, no other sites of disease, so we'd like to go for upfront resection basically.
Okay. What about transplant?
So in ISCC, if lesion is amenable to upfront resection and future liver remnant is more than 25% in a non-cirrhotic patient, then we can do surgery alone.
Okay. So yeah, basically what you would consider for a transplant is when you have underlying cirrhosis as well with a good Child-Pugh status and a lesion, right? Then you might consider a transplant as an option. Otherwise, most of the data is for HCCs. When you have criteria for transplant and surgery, outcomes are largely similar. So yes, I agree with you. Take. So what was the type of surgery done? Can you just tell us the details?
So it was a right extended hepatectomy.
Why was it right extended?
So it was involving extended means they have done hepatectomy, more than 4 lobes they have removed.
Good. Well, okay, so intraoperatively they found something else compared to the radiology, is it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So they did an extended right hepatectomy. Okay. Can you just read out the HPR features, please?
Yes. So histology was intrahepatic cholangiocarcinoma, which was moderately differentiated, and there was a tumor was involving the wall of portal vein, which is close to margin, 2 to 3 millimeters. Our margins were free. Perineural invasion was present. On ISC, tumor was positive for CK7 and CK19. It was negative for glypican-3 and heparin and synaptophysin. And all margins were free. Closest liver parenchymal margin was 1 centimeter, and all nodes were negative, including station 13.
Okay. 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 So, do you know the staging of intrahepatic cholangiocarcinomas? Could you just, because it's not a common tumor and it is actually a staging which is tough to remember. Can you just, brief us on the staging?
So, T1 is a solitary tumor, either less than 5 centimeter or more than 5 centimeter, T1A, T1B, but without any vascular invasion.
Mm-hmm.
And T2 tumor is a solitary tumor with vascular invasion, or multiple tumors with or without vascular invasion. T2.
Okay.
T3 is a tumor which is involving or perforating visceral peritoneum, and T4 will be involvement of extrahepatic structures by contiguous bed or direct invasion.
Okay. So here it involves the wall of the portal vein.
Yes.
So why is this T4?
So it is involving the main portal vein. So that is why.
Sure. Okay. Okay. Check. I mean, this is like quite a tough. I've tried to remember this one many times. It's quite tough. Okay. Fine. So it's a T4N0 intrahepatic cholangiocarcinomas. One thing that you guys need to remember is often in cholangiocarcinomas, You might need to even excise part of the biliary tree as well. So, they do something called EHBTE, which is extrahepatic biliary tract excision. And that is one of the part of the template of the resection also. This patient obviously did not require that. So great. This is a T4 in a 70-year-old patient, correct? With a history of CAD, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, sir. Please see it.
Okay. Now this patient has come to you approximately 3 weeks post surgery, and what next?
Since it's a T4 lesion, so we like to go for adjuvant therapy.
Okay. What are the things that you would like to do prior to starting him on treatment?
So we like to see his fitness. So since he's CAD, we like to go for 2D echo
Okay.
and renal function test,
Okay.
audiometry.
Okay. Why do you want to do an audiometry?
If you would like to go for cisplatin based therapy, then
Okay, we'll come to that. But okay, I agree that an audiometry is a fair call. Okay, then.
probably DTP and GFR because he's already 70-year.
Okay, makes sense. Okay.
Then means hemogram and liver functions already been done.
Okay.
Like to repeat liver functions.
Okay. Would you also like to send him across the OPD to the geriatric clinic?
Yes, sir.
नहीं करोगे?
Yes, will do.
Okay, fine. So, okay, so the the DTPA is mild to moderate hearing loss. The GFR is 62. Blood work is okay. What do you want to do? And other blood work is fine. He is PS1. What do you want to do?
So we like to see his echocardiography.
That's also normal. He's undergone a surgery, man. So his cardiac status will be good, na? Largely. I'm not saying always, but largely it will be good, na? So echo is also okay. Okay.
Then since he is a known case of CAD and previous history of MI, I would like to do stress.
The echo is fine and the cardiac status is fine.
Yes.
He is now saying, okay, let's go ahead with whatever is to be done next. What would you do?
For planning adjuvant therapy, we can think of either single agent capecitabine.
Okay. Any other options?
Another option is gemcitabine cisplatin.
Any other options? Would you consider observation?
Observation is also one strategy, sir, but since BILCAP trial has showed improved OS with the capecitabine, so we'd like to consider.
Okay. Okay. So the BILCAP study, what did they do?
So they did 8 months of capecitabine versus observation. So in
Was it 8 months or 6 months?
6 months, 8 cycles, sorry, 6 months of yes.
Okay. What dose did they use?
1250 mg per meter square. We not sure.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And on the intention to treat, did the study achieve statistical significance?
They achieved only in per protocol analysis, not in ITT population.
Yeah. Okay. So remember that, yes, a difference in 15 months is important. And I would think that that is good enough to consider adjuvant. But if someone says, you know what, you don't have a single positive trial, and on the per protocol, only on the intention to treat was a negative study, they're not completely incorrect. Okay. So yes, capecitabine is an option. Observation is an option. Putting him on a clinical trial is an option. Assume his creatinine clearance was 38. What would you do then? He's 70 years, so there is a high chance that his creatinine clearance will be 38. Tab kya karo?
Capecitabine only with dose modification as per creatinine clearance.
Generally, so technically you're right. 30 to 40 पे आप dose modify करके दे सकते हैं, but that would mean 50% dose. Okay, right? So you think very hard before doing that. Okay, so you would tend towards observation is what my thought process would be. But yes, I agree with a dose reduced this one of capecitabine also. Okay, I think that's good enough. Good presentation, Ashutosh. I think you covered most aspects. Good job. Any questions from residents before we go on to the second case? Anyone? Any question? Yeah. So Lingraj, you're not a resident, but okay. Lingraj's question is, what is the 5-year survival of this patient? It would be approximately 35 to 40% would be the expected, because it's a T4 lesion. There are very high chances for a recurrence. So yeah. Anything from the resident? See the
Sir, is there any
yeah.
IHC to differentiate between hepatocellular carcinoma and intrahepatic cholangiocarcinoma, like cholangio and HCC on IHC basis?
So one is the classical HCCs and IHCCs actually are well differentiated even on under the microscope pathologically. The key for the HCC diagnosis is the arginase and hepar1, right? While you will have the standard adenocarcinoma markers for IHCC, which would be CK7, CK19, and CK20, with CK7 and CK7 being positive, CK19 being also positive, and possibly CK20 negative. But these are not like strictly exclusion, right? We are more and more seeing this entity called mixed HCC adenocarcinoma, and our pathologists are able to give us only that. But in terms of exam and in terms of practice, arginase and hepar1 for HCC, CK7 positivity with negativity of hepar and arginase for IHCC. Does that help you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions? Amit, other than MRCP for staging, it will also give you a very good idea of the block. The thing is that purely doing, an MRCP for a block does not make sense if you're going to do a PTC gram anyways. But doing an MRI with MRCP will give you an identification of the anatomy of the lesions. It can help you plan surgery also to some extent and give you the level of the block. So that's why you would do the MRCP as well. Any other questions from the residents? Again, Amit, you're not a resident. So, anything else from any resident? Okay. If not, if you have any questions, we can take them at the end of the second presentation also. Can we have the next case, Ashutosh? Yeah, let's go.
Can I start, sir?
Yeah, please.
So this is a 60-year-old male patient resident of Bhopal who is clerk by occupation. He is presented with chief complaints of altered bowel habits since 2 months and recent onset abdominal pain since 10 days.
Ravi, sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, so yours is a short case, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I want
only the positive findings I will.
Yes, good.
Yes,
go ahead.
So the complaints are presented with history of present illness was started 2 months back with complaints of altered bowel habits with change in the frequency and appearance of the stools once in 2 days. With recent onset abdominal pain, which is over the right side of the upper abdomen with a pain score of 3/10 and colicky type of the abdominal pain, and no aggravating or relating factors are there. So, on the significant finding, other history was there is a loss of weight of 5 kgs over the past 3 months, and there is loss of appetite and history of easy fatigability was there. And no other symptoms are there. And coming to the past history, patient has no history of similar complaints in the past, had hypertensive, diabetic, and history of CVA. And patient had a history of trauma for the open reduction and internal fixation of the tibia has been done 2 years back. So on personal history, important history was there is maternal aunt had an history of CA colon, which is diagnosed at the age of 55 years. And the treatment history was not significant. So coming to the summary, 61-year-old male, non-smoker, non-hypertensive, diabetic, with a history of CVA, with a history of CA colon in the maternal aunt, diagnosed at the age of 55 years, and presented with complaints of recurrent constipation since 2 months, loss of weight and appetite with new onset abdominal pain. So with this summary, the differential diagnosis which I will point out was, first thing will be the some GI malignancy, and second thing will be infectious etiology like tuberculosis. So,
Yeah. What was the second thing that you had said?
because tuberculosis, because the patient has an complaints of loss of weight and appetite was there.
Okay. Okay. Why GI malignancy? I mean, with you will generally
Considering the age, the complaints of altered bowel habits with an history of easy fatigability, so more point towards the GI malignancy.
Okay, Ravi, you're like a train man. Slow down. What I meant was, when you're saying recurrent constipation, how often will you have constipation in upper GI? Looks more like colon. No, altered bowel habits is classical of colon, no?
Yes, sir.
नहीं. So उतना तो कह सकते हैं. You don't have to generalize it so much. That's what I'm saying. ठीक है? Right. So you could think of something in the colon. What? Just go back to your symptomatology again. Yeah. So clearly you have altered bowel habits with frequency. The what other thing would you think based on this history? So one is colon. Okay. Anything else?
Any retroperitoneal mass in, causing compression of the bowel.
Correct. Anything else?
Any irritable bowel syndrome is the least. Considering the age, it will be unlikely.
Weight loss and irritable bowel syndrome usually don't go together, but okay, fair. What else? Could it be pancreatic malignancy? Huh? You
Yes,
can
with
have
recent-
malabsorption syndromes which cause altered bowel habits and pancreatic malignancies, right?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Right. So, and if you have a tail, sorry, this is right-sided, right? Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
So HOP mass could also cause this, right? So I agree with what you said. Most of your differential diagnoses are okay. The one thing that you could say is, since altered bowel habits is the predominant complaint, you would like to think of a colonic malignancy, and the others, since maybe a pancreatic malignancy, and then the rest would be non-malignant causes. Great. So how do you want to investigate? There's no history of smoking.
Should I complete examination finding? No, sir. Non-smokers.
Okay. Positive examination findings?
Only pallor is present, sir, and no other findings. And distal rectal examination is also normal, with no mass or stricture and with no loaded rectum was there.
Okay.
Apart from that, no other positive
Okay.
finding.
So I guess if he has anemia, then that would explain some part of the fatigue also, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Right. So, okay. What do you want to do next?
So the investigation workup, like routine hematological investigation, complete blood picture, and RFT, serum electrolytes, CEA, and I want to go ahead with colonoscopy plus or minus biopsy, and for the CECT, PAP for the staging evaluation.
Why do you not want to do liver function tests?
LFT is also, yes, sir. I want to do the LFT also, but it will not indicate just as a baseline organ function, but it will not.
तुम right upper quadrant pain कह रहे हो ना?
Yes, sir.
तो liver के आसपास है? And by that method, then RFT will not help you. What does RFT help you with? Other than saying
Yes,
I can give contrast for the CT. Huh?
Yes, sir. I thought because of the altered bowel habits, that sorts of diarrhea to rule out the electrolyte abnormalities and kidney function
Okay.
test.
I mean, I guess no one will mistake you if you say you want to do LFTs also, man.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, fine. So this looks okay to me. Yes, the CBC I would want definitely, because he's probably anemic, and the colonoscopy would be the next investigation to go further. Great. What were the CBC and colonoscopy findings?
So CBC HB 8.9, NCB of 80, and colonoscopy was showing ulcero-infiltrative growth is seen just beyond the hepatic flexure at 50 centimeter, causing gross luminal narrowing.
Okay. So he didn't have any, he had constipation, but And it was not absolute, right?
No, sir. No, sir. No complaints of vomiting. No.
Okay. And were they able to go beyond the growth?
Yes, sir. Negotiated beyond, sir.
Okay, right. Fair. Okay. So what next?
The BAPSI came out as adenocarcinoma, which is moderately differentiated.
Mhm.
And then CT has been done.
Mhm.
CT was showing, here we can see 3 cross-section in the axial lesion has been asymmetrical thickening it has been noted in the ascending colon at the hepatic flexure.
Mhm.
No mild luminal narrowing is there, but no but no obstruction was there.
Yeah. There are no dilated proximal bowels really.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Liver, from what you have shown, looks okay.
Yes, sir.
No, I mean, again, very limited, but the cuts seem okay, and adrenal and para-aortic also look okay. Is
Yes,
that
sir. Fine, sir.
okay? Great. So this is a hepatic flexure limited tumor, which is an adenocarcinoma, and
Adenocarcinoma.
he is anemic. Okay, right. What next?
So we'll go for upfront surgery, like right extended hemicolectomy.
Why extended?
Because the location of the tumor is in the ascending colon at hepatic flexure, and the
Hmm.
margins required are almost 5 to 6 centimeters margins we have to take. So
That they might need an extended right hemical. Agreed. He'll also need to get a proper anesthetic clearance because he has multiple comorbidities. So he
Yes.
would probably come under the high risk ASA at least 2, if not 3 category. Okay, right. So was surgery done?
Yes, sir. So underwent right extended hemicolectomy, and the pathological findings are adenocarcinoma, and the tumor was extending up to the subserosa. It's no LVI, no PNI, and lymph nodes out of 49 lymph nodes, all are negative. And then IHC, the tumor is positive for the MLH1, MSH2, MSH6, and PMS2. That is, MMR is protein proficient, and microsatellite stable.
Okay. Can you just tell us the stages for colon cancer?
So stage 1, stage 2, coming to the stage 1 carcinoma T1 N0, and stage 2 was T2 T3 N0 and T4 N0.
Come again?
Whereas T2 T3 or T4 N0, sir.
No, stage 1 is T1 or T2.
Yes, sir.
Stage
Okay. 2 is T3 N0 or T4 N0.
Okay.
And stage 3 is any node positive disease.
Correct.
Stage 4 is metastatic.
Okay. Can you tell us the T1 to T4 classifications?
Yes,
I mean, if you remember. Yeah.
Extending up to this, T1 is up to submucosa. T2 is involving the muscularis propria, and T3 is beyond muscularis propria, extending into pericolic tissues, and T4 is invading the visceral peritoneum or adjacent viscera. Yeah,
basically T3 has not gone through. It has just involved the outer layers, but it has not gone through. Good. So yeah, that is a fair summary. What do you want to do?
So this setting, considering the stage and the no risk factors are there, the ideal would be observation. But the only thing was the history of CA colon in the maternal aunt, and the microsatellite was stable. So we can consider single agent capecitabine.
Okay. Now assume you don't do anything for this patient. What would be the expected 5-year survival of this patient?
For 5-year survival for T3 disease will be 80%. Sir.
Yeah, approximately 80%.
80%.
Now, as you correctly said, I think both observation and capecitabine are fair choices for him because he's MSI stable. Now, even though he is more than 50 in view of the colon cancer in the maternal aunt, I think it would be a good idea to do a genetic screening for him, more so from his children's point of view. And he has no high risk factors, so I think observation is justified. What we normally do when there are no high risk factors is that we use the MSI as a deciding factor. If it's MSI high, we definitely observe. If it's MSI stable, we consider for capecitabine. But your point is valid. He's a good candidate for observation, also because he has significant comorbidities and stuff, right? Now, assuming that you let's say that you are planning for capecitabine, what doses would you use, and what would be the common side effects that you would explain to the patient, and what are the expected completion rates of all 6 months of CAPE?
So the doses will be 1250 mg per meter square from day 1 to day 14 with Q 3 weekly cycles.
BD or BD?
BD, sir.
Okay.
BD and Q 3 weekly intervals. And the expected common side effects will be diarrhea, vomiting, altered LFTs, and hand-foot syndrome. These are the most common side effects.
Yeah. What about stuff like neutropenia, thrombocytopenia?
Neutropenia, the incidence was 5 to 8%, sir, the single agent case.
Yeah, it's not much. I agree. Would you consider doing any diagnostic tests to, predict toxicity?
DPD mutation, we can consider.
So, would you do it, and why would you do it or not do it? Hello.
Risk of the toxicities.
Sorry, can you just repeat that? I didn't get it.
To predict the risk of toxicities, we can do the DPD
No,
mutation.
but would you do it? That's what I'm asking. Hello.
Sir, yes, sir.
No, I mean, is it mandated, or would you do it
No.
as a personal choice?
Not mandatory, sir.
Yeah. So a lot of us do it, especially in patients where, the risk benefit ratio is more towards, there is a lesser risk to benefit to risk ratio. And then you have something in the background which will tell you a reason in case toxicities occur, but it is not mandatory to do it. Okay. And how would you follow this patient up?
So the follow-up will be 3 monthly. We have 3 to 6 monthly. We have to do the CEA, and then CT scan annually, and colonoscopy every 3 to 5 years we have to do. First, we have to check whether the completion colonoscopy has been done or not. So if it is not done immediately after surgery or during chemotherapy, we have to do the completion colonoscopy, and then we can follow up with after doing completion colonoscopy, and then after 1 year we have to do, and after that 3 to 5 years we have to do the colonoscopy.
Okay. Now, for discussion's sake, assume that this patient had T3N1 disease,
Yes,
with 2 out of 49 nodes positive. Okay.
yes, sir.
What would you do? And he's
So-
fit after surgery. All his comorbidities are controlled. He's come to the geriatric clinic. We've also said, despite all this, he's fit.
Yes.
DTP, whatever you want to do is all done. Now,
Thing
he's
was,
T3N1.
Yes, sir. So considering T3 and N1, so the stage will come as stage 3 disease. It will become stage 3 disease, and it will become under risk stratification in the stage 3. It will come under low risk because not T4 and not N2 disease. So because of the T3 N1 low risk and MSI stable, so the options will be 3 months versus 6 months of therapy is either of them. Either of them we can consider either 3 months of therapy or 6 months of therapy. 3 months is not inferior to the 6 months of therapy, either Capox or Folfox.
Yeah, correct. That's completely right. Assuming this guy was T3N1, what is his expected 5-year survival, assuming you gave him 3 months of Capox?
So the survival was benefit you are asking, sir, or
No, what was his expected 5-year survival?
T3N1 disease, the survival expected 5-year overall survival was 45 to 50%, sir. So
Not for low risk rate. इसका मैं पूछ रहा हूँ.
T3N0, sir.
No. So this patient T3N1, you gave
Yes.
3 months of Capox. What is his expected 5-year survival? It's closer to 60-62%. Yeah. Okay. Not 40-45. So if you had a T4N2 disease or something, yes, it would be closer to 50 than 60-65. But for this patient, then it would be around 60 to 64% is what I think. Right?
Yes.
Okay. I think you covered most things well. If and when this patient has a recurrence, what is the median time to a recurrence? This is like gold medal question. If you answer this, then you get gold. So what is the expected median time to recurrence? Hello?
Sir, yes, not
I
sure.
can't hear you. Yeah, it's around 18 to 24 months. Okay.
Okay.
Most of these cancers come back at that time, right? So good job, Ravi. I think you presented very well. All the points were covered. Any questions from any of the residents? Anything with any of the two case presentations that you guys had any questions from anyone? Achha, even Lingaraj and Amit don't have any questions, which means I think there are genuinely no questions. So both of you, especially Ashutosh, if you had any reading material, just send it over to the rest of the residents also. Cholangiocarcinomas is not a common topic, so any radiology or something, I'll also dig and send to you guys. But whatever you guys had, just send it over to the other residents also, right, Ashutosh?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good presentation, both of you. Good job. I think we can end with that. Thank you.